Hey there YouTube, Wrestling Optimus here, back with another action figure review. It's Wednesday night, and you know what that means, time for AEW Dynamite on TNT. It's also night 1 of Fyter Fest, and AEW's second week back on the road in front of live fans. So I'm excited for this stacked card. But first, if you're new here, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more pro wrestling and action figure content. Now, we're headed into my custom arena, so for a recap and review, let's take it over to the action figures. First up, Jon Moxley comes out through a raucous Austin, Texas crowd to defend his IWGP US Championship against Machine Gun Carl Anderson. Their respective partners, Eddie Kingston and Doc Gallows, get into a fight before the bell. They brawl into the crowd as the match officially begins. There's a lot of intense action, but in the end, Mox nails a paradigm shift and retains. Coincidentally, we find the former IWGP United States Champion, Lance Archer, backstage with Jake the Snake Roberts. He says it's about time for his rematch and challenges Mox to a Texas death match next week for the title in Dallas. Later in the night, Moxley accepts, saying Archer is Texas-born, Texas-bred, and next week, he'll be Texas-dead. Andrade El Idolo is also backstage, along with Pentagon's interpreter Alex Abrahantes. He says that Andrade has been given permission from Tony Khan himself to break down the Forbidden Door and compete for titles around the world. But Andrade has Alex here because he's much more interested in Penta's group, Death Triangle. Taz joins commentary while Hook and Hobbs are at ringside as Absolute Ricky Starks challenges the Machine Brian Cage for his unofficial FTW World Heavyweight Championship in a continuation of the Team Taz Civil War. This is also technically our second title match in a row, making for one hell of a start to the night. Brian Cage takes advantage of Stark's return from injury in a classic battle of power and strength versus speed and agility. When Ricky tries to use the FTW title as a weapon, Hobbs rips it away and won't let him. But it's all a ruse as Hook distracts the referee and Hobbs nails Cage in the face with the belt himself to help Ricky Starks become the new FTW champion. Meanwhile, that should set up the Machine for a nice babyface run moving forward. Cody Rhodes grabs a headset from the commentary desk and scolds Malachi Black for kicking Arn Anderson last week. Then he grabs a mic, storms down to the ring, and says it's Fyter Fest, so he feels like fighting. But Malachi appears up on the Tron instead. He uses the metaphor of putting a horse out to pasture as a way of saying Cody doesn't have it anymore. The American Nightmare demands that he come to the ring. The lights go out, and sure enough, Black appears and obliges. The two men briefly scuffle before security separates them. Alex Marvez finds Tully Blanchard and asks about his cheap shot on Conan last week. They're interrupted by Santana and Ortiz, who pretend to attack Tully with a fake crowbar. They say they were taught to respect their elders, but ominously warn him not to walk around by himself in the future. Back in the ring, Tony Schiavone introduces Hangman Adam Page. He explains that after he lost his shot at the AEW World title, he took it pretty hard, but the Dark Order is right. He deserves another chance. This brings out Kenny, Don Callis, and the Young Bucks. Matt Jackson is the only one to get in the ring though, and claims that Page abandoned the Elite for a bunch of losers. He jokes about Hangman's alcohol problem and catches an elbow to the face. When the Elite try to jump Page, the Dark Order run down and make the save. Kenny gets in the ring and says he understands Page wants a match with him, but he demands that they have a 5-on-5 between their respective groups first. Hangman agrees, but counters that if they win, not only does he get a shot at Kenny's belt, the Dark Order get a shot at the Bucks tag team titles. Omega says they haven't earned it, so to make things fair, if the Cowboy loses, he has to retire. Paige accepts and the match is on. Alex Marvez interviews Chris Jericho about MJF's 5 Labors Challenge. He accepts it and explains how, in Greek myth, Hercules successfully completed his labors and got what he wanted. Shawn Spears comes from out of nowhere and hits Jericho in the throat with a chair. MJF casually strolls in and says next week the first labor is against Spears and the stipulation is that he can use a chair while Jericho can't. So much for the theory that he'll have to fight his way through the inner circle. Next is a feud nearly 2 decades in the making as Matt Hardy takes on Christian Cage. It's a surprisingly technical match given the animosity between these two. I was expecting more of a brawl. They go through a commercial break and get in a bunch of exciting near falls before Christian hits the kill switch and, despite their history, picks up his first career win over Matt. The Hardy family office comes out for the post-match beatdown, but Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus make the save, possibly setting up their next feud. Miro seems to have changed the strap for the TNT title belt from black to white. He cuts a promo saying that he thought he had it all when he was rich with a beautiful wife, but it didn't equal success in the ring. So he sought forgiveness and received new purpose from the heavens, and that's how he became God's favorite champion. Tony Schiavone is back to introduce his friend and the AEW Women's Champion, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. She admits that she's lost to Nyla Rose in the past, but she's a completely different person now. Vicky has a last name that keeps her relevant in pro wrestling, while Nyla needs this belt, but it's staying around the doctor's waist. Backstage, Vicky and Nyla are watching and they respond in predictable fashion, saying that they're gonna win. Best friends, including Orange Cassidy, accompany the debuting Wheeler Yuta from my stomping grounds of Philadelphia as he takes on one of many Texas natives on the AEW roster, Sammy Guevara. This is effectively a face-versus-face dynamic, making for an interesting high-flying match. To that point, Sammy hits a huge springboard cutter, followed by a GTS for the victory. QT Marshall berates Tony Schiavone during an interview segment, then pours a drink over his head. So he's just a generic bully now? Another Philly native, Penelope Ford, faces the returning Yuka Sakazaki, who has some of the best music in all of pro wrestling, but they always cut it off at the best part. In the end, a magical girl splash takes out the super bad girl as Yuka Sakazaki picks up the win. The main event is a coffin match between Darby Allin and all-ego Ethan Page. Right off the bat, Darby reveals that he's wearing a steel plate on his back and immediately does a coffin drop onto Page with it to start the match. As they fight around ringside, Scorpio Sky pops out of the coffin and attacks. That brings out the Icon Sting, who throws Sky over a barricade and into the crowd. Meanwhile, Page unhooks one of the turnbuckles. They also fight into the crowd during a commercial break. When we come back, there's a set of steps in the ring as Page attaches the hook of the turnbuckle to Darby's necklace and chokes him. Allin gets his receipt by fishhooking Ethan and throwing him into the coffin, but can't get the lid shut. Instead, they fight inside the coffin for a bit, then return to the ring. Page counters another coffin drop into a top rope Ego's Edge onto the steps, but it's all over when Darby grabs his skateboard and lands on the back of Page's neck with it, sending him tumbling into the coffin. Allin closes the lid and wins to thunderous applause. That's not enough though, as Darby climbs to the top rope and does another coffin drop into the coffin with Page still in it. Seriously, how is this guy so cool? That was absolutely insane, and it was only night 1 of Fyter Fest. Next week is looking just as epic, and my only hope is that the ratings accurately reflect the quality of these shows. AEW deserves it for entertaining us through the pandemic without massive roster cuts, and then firing on all cylinders once they were able to leave Daly's place. They remain my favorite promotion, and I'm so thankful they came into existence. Alright, that'll do it for Fyter Fest Night 1. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I'll be back next week for Night 2, and then again the week after that with my review of Fight for the Fallen. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to do all that normal YouTube stuff. Smash the like button, share with any wrestling or action figure fans you may know, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. You can also talk to me over on Twitter at WrestlingOptimus, or see all my best figure photography over on Instagram at WrestlingOptimus. If you haven't seen my review of Road Rager, you can check that out right here. But until next time, I've been Wrestling Optimus, and I'll catch you later.